All right, Henna Pryor, welcome to Persistence Playbook.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yes, very happy to have you on the show, and I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. Love your TEDx talks, and kind of want to start a little bit about your journey, and specifically, what did your transition from working in the corporate world for so many years to being an international speaker and a best-selling author look like?
Well, my career has been defined by two major career pivots. So I'll start at the beginning only because I think it informs the second one. But the brief version is I was a finance major. My first job out of college was actually at Ernst& Young. They now go by EY, Big Four public
Big
accounting
Four.
firm. Yep. I was in audit. And if you've met me for more than 3 seconds, you will quickly see why audit was not the long-term career for me. It's, being an accountant was probably not in my blood for the long term. But that was pivot number one. I switched from being in the trenches of finance and accounting to moving into a 100% commissions role, doing finance and accounting, executive search and staffing. So I was a headhunter, for better lack of a
Cool.
better term. 100% commissions, did that for 14 years and was very good at it. But there was something that was just niggling in my mind. I had this voice that kept saying, Henna, you're good at this. You have flexibility. At the time, my kids were young. And so that flexibility was very important to me. But I knew I was destined to do something more. I had just felt like I had outgrown that position. And so for about 2 years, that voice was shouting at me, thinking, okay, you're good at this, but there's something else. There's something else.
Sure.
I couldn't do anything. I felt very frozen. And I realize now in retrospect that the reason why is that it's very easy to get off a bad path, right? Accounting wasn't for me. I didn't like it. So making pivot number one was not difficult. It's a lot harder to get off of a good path on paper that isn't yours.
For sure. Yeah. You're doing well. You're getting the external accolades. People are giving you that pat on your back. People respect the work you do, but inside, you're probably meant for something else. It can be tough to make that transition.
Yeah, and to the extent that when I even suggested doing something else, I would get a lot of, "Are you crazy? You have the dream gig, right? You're successful, you have flexibility as a mom, all these things that you would want. Why would you give that up?" And so all of these surrounding reasons that I shouldn't made it really hard, but ultimately after 2 years, the reason became because I want to, right? There's a calling that feels larger. And in that time, I had to just really work on my self-talk and self-trust. Henna, you didn't know how to do staffing and search before. You were resourceful, you worked hard, and you figured it out. That is the blueprint that you will use in this next thing. So I finally stopped sitting on the fence. I told them, hey, I want to enroll in an executive coaching program. I may or may not stay at the company after I finish this program. After my first class, I knew that was it. I gave them 8 months notice. And that was that. In September 2019, went off on my own.
How cool. How cool. Now,
Yeah.
how did you know that your original problem that you were going to solve for people and companies was the ability to embrace risk?
Oh, that was never what I thought would be the original problem was going to solve for people. So I think I had no idea that's what I would be speaking about now, or that would be an area that I'd settle into. What's helpful to understand about that is I think anybody who gets super stuck on here's the problem I'm going to solve and this is what I'm going to become known for, you are digging yourself into a world of analysis paralysis very early. So I had some ideas on what I enjoyed talking about, what I enjoyed learning about, what I enjoyed coaching about. But what I thought I was going to do professionally when I went out on my own and what I actually do today is very different and has been a series of little adjustments and evolution. I remember at one point I thought, since I had a former, staffing background, that I was going to become an employee engagement expert. I remember actually I created nobody knows this, the first time I ever said this out loud. I thought the name engagemental would be really cute, like engagement and
Okay.
like mental skills. So I remember I booked the domain on GoDaddy for like $12, like engage. Maybe somebody else bought it. I don't know. But long story short, that never became a thing. It never ended up being the thing. So it was just through a series of experimentation. A lot of people saying, hey, you executive coach, you teach on X. Can you come teach our team about, Y? And it was usually, yeah, I totally can. And then hurry up and build it.
Right.
right? Hurry up and
Then build
research
the
it.
talk right from there. That's pretty
This is how
interesting.
most people start, but it's
Yeah.
through that process that you start to figure out where you really have gifts or you really have a perspective. And over the course of 5 years, now it's clearer to me where I do have expertise, and even that expertise is changing over the next 6 months, over the next 12 months. So I think the permission to evolve all of that is a huge gift. I never knew it would be this.
That's so interesting, right? Because I think so many people, if they want to be thought leaders or speakers or coaches, they think they first have to decide on their niche. What's the problem I'm going to solve for the world, and then I can go out there and take all the action. And they get so stuck on figuring out what that problem is, what their calling is, that they never actually wind up taking any of the action that follows
Yeah.
it. So I think that what you said there's a lot of truth and clarity for people that can gain is just get out there and start taking action. Start teaching and solving problems based on things that you're intuitively interested in. But it's going to evolve over time. But the action is going to kind of guide you towards the direction that you should be headed.
Yeah, I understand where the advice comes from, right? That I do believe in this general adage of if you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one. If you're just repeating other people's ideas, you're not really going to move the needle. So I think what people are pointing to when they say niche down is really what they're trying to say is find your unique point of view. Find your unique differentiation factor. So what I do encourage people to do when they're trying to be thought leaders or trying to have a voice online is at first, you may not know what your thing is, and that's okay. But part of how you suss that out and excavate that is to start to have a point of view on anything that you're sharing. You are welcome to share somebody else's HBR article. I have an ink column. You are welcome to share my ink articles, but I want to know your point of view on this thing that you're sharing. Don't just take one of my lines out and copy paste it. That's fine, but that's not going to differentiate you as a thought leader. What's going to differentiate you in that category is having something to say about it. And soon enough, over time, you'll notice patterns of, I tend to have a point of view on X part of the conversation. I tend to have something unique to say about Y that other people aren't talking about. And in that way, you can kind of back yourself into what is my thing that I want to become known for, but you have to allow yourself to do that discovery, or you're going to find yourself in something that is not your best area of gifts or in your zone of genius.
That makes me think about when you see on TikTok or Instagram, people will post those like reaction videos, right? Where they've got the article behind them and they're pointing to different parts of the article and they're talking about what this article says.
Yeah.
But the videos that just point out what the article says don't really hit home very impactfully. The ones where they point out the article and then they give their own point of view are the ones where you go, oh, okay, like that's a person I might consider following because they've got their own thoughts on the topic. They're not just regurgitating someone else's information.
Exactly right. And it doesn't have to be a contrarian point of view. It can just be additive to the conversation. Here's something that people didn't notice. My friend Mike Ganino, he teaches storytelling and stage presence. He does this beautifully. After the Olympics, Celine Dion did that vocal performance for the first time in a number of years. He shared a video on Instagram that went pretty viral where he was just kind of pointing out some of what she was doing very masterfully with her body, with her emotion. Now, we all saw the performance. Many of us did. Millions of us tuned in. And after his commentary, suddenly I was noticing things that weren't in the original version that I saw. We can all do that. It's like a sprinkling of seasoning on somebody else's stuff until we develop the muscle in what is our stuff, right? What is our own? But most people can't jump into the deep end on creating their own thought leadership until they've practiced using their voice in that way.
Curious, what was the first talk that you were giving in the early goings? So the first talk that you were pitching to companies?
Oh God, I don't even remember. Honestly, whatever they asked me for. So so I'll tell you.
Right.
Actually, I do know. My 14 years was in executive search and staffing. I was a recruiter, so I was working with candidates and clients. So my first, I don't know about first talk, but my first audience was other staffing firms, was recruiting firms, because that was what I knew. That was the industry in which I was a top producer for 14 years. And I had intimate expertise of the industry. And because I had been in it for 14 years, had developed some points of view on how business, sales, communication should be done. These are the things that I had identified had made me, as successful as some of my other peers, even though they were working 60 hours a week and I was working 40 with 2 small kids at home who required a lot of my attention. How was I earning the same, or at least close to the same as them? because of these things that I really doubled down on: my sales messaging, my executive coaching skills in a recruiting conversation. Things that I had identified were my differentiators became my first speaking topics or training programs. I taught staffing firms how to write effective sales messaging. I still do sometimes. I taught staffing firms and recruitment firms how to be more coach like in their conversations. So my first content was very rooted in, what do I know? What have I
So
done?
so
Build on that.
cool. Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. But I think it's also empowering for people to hear that they don't necessarily have to stay in that lane forever, right?
No.
Start in a lane you're comfortable with, that you have some expertise in, and then you can expand from there. And curious, along your journey, how long did you kind of stick within that staffing niche until you started speaking for other companies that weren't necessarily associated with staffing at all?
Yeah, so I didn't have language for this at the time, and now I have sort of a term for it that I learned from some of my teachers, Michael Port and Andrew Davis. So probably I would say 6 to 9 months was pretty largely centered on that industry.
Yeah,
And what happens with time, and as you practice delivering your content, is really other people will start to tell you, oh, this would be really useful for, my
so and
buddy's
so.
sales organization, my
Yeah,
my friend who has a software company. And so what you start to do is you don't just all of a sudden declare that you're now the sales speaker for every industry. What Andrew and Michael have taught me, the term that they taught me, is you have fractals. So fractals means almost like a sub industry that you focus on first. So right out of my staffing career, the industry that I focused on first was staffing. Surprise,
right,
surprise. But
right.
then you think, well, what fractals are similar or adjacent to this one that might also benefit from what I'm teaching? So staffing is, external recruitment search. Well, internal recruiting firms, talent acquisition teams, HR functions could really benefit from some of this work. Some of the content that I'm teaching is very, specific to a sales process. Staffing is a professional services sales process. What other professional services companies might benefit from this model, from this framework? And so you slowly take what you've built and you apply it to other fractals that have something in common with the one that you just did. And that's how the tree grows. That's how the web widens. You don't just suddenly, online declare yourself to be open to other industries now. It doesn't quite work that way. You don't develop expertise by just calling yourself something. You're not an expert in anything unless somebody else calls you that, quite frankly. So the more sustainable way to build that practice into other industries is exploring, where are there overlaps? Where's the Venn diagram between this and that? How can I slowly start to move over? And then slowly, over time becomes a flywheel. It becomes faster and faster as your content becomes more scalable.
Love that. Love that. I think I just learned a new word, fractals.
Yeah.
Cool. I
It's
love that
it's
one.
Michael Port and Andrew Davis's word that they use. I have to give them credit. I learned it from them.
Sounds good. Sounds good. But I think that is really interesting to hear for a lot of people is, start in your lane of comfort, and you only have to really stay there for 6 to 9 months, and then find those other industries where your message could also translate and be beneficial. And then you can expand from there. And I want to kind of dive into just the topic of embracing risk. And I guess
Mhm.
just right off the top, why is it so important that we prioritize embracing risk in our day-to-day lives?
Today, as of our conversation, we are living in a world that seems hell bent on optimizing for smoothness. Every friction point, every bump, thanks to technology, thanks to processes, seems like it's just insistent on being smoothed away. So we want something on Amazon, just one click. Like I don't have to click twice, three times, one click. Do I want lunch? DoorDash. I don't actually have to go to the restaurant and pick it up, right? It's here. I don't have to deal with a human. There's so many things in our lives. We DM, we Slack, we have dating apps. Everything seems to be optimized for smoothness.
It's
And
true.
what we're not realizing is there is a shadow side to all of this convenience. We are now living our lives on this precipice of convenience and losing the necessary muscle strength for doing things that feel a little bit hard on the day
Right,
to day.
right. You don't have
So
to
when,
talk to the barista anymore to get your coffee. The guy
yeah,
doesn't have to walk up to the girl in public and ask for a date. There is just a
no,
lot of, there's a lot less friction in our day to day.
exactly. And again, it's a function of the society. Like, I don't fault Gen Z for not knowing how to go up to someone of the opposite sex or of the same sex in a bar and having a conversation. They didn't have to. They
Right.
can't help when they were born. And We now need to create some structures and standards around building in some intention if we don't want these muscles to completely go to atrophy, right? We don't want to lose them entirely. So when it comes to taking risks, let's just give a very tactical example. In the workplace, maybe taking a risk is, asking your boss for a raise. If you're an entrepreneur, maybe taking a risk is, putting yourself out there in front of a new client, shooting your shot. If you literally never give yourself an opportunity to speak to the barista who is mispronouncing your name, and then, hey, by the way, it's Henna, not Hannah, just know that by the time you need to have that really spicy conversation, it's going to feel that much harder. Right? It is akin to going to the gym and being like, oh, 200-pound barbell? Cool. I haven't been here in 3 years, but let's try it. Good luck. That's going to feel horrendous. So every day we have to now be very intentional about creating opportunities for these friction moments, for these micro risks, because otherwise embracing the big risk in the moment that we want to, it is going to become harder than ever to find that activation energy to do it. We haven't done it, even in the little ways.
I get Brad written on my Starbucks cup a lot. So I'm going to start speaking up for myself in those situations.
And again, maybe the Starbucks cup doesn't matter, but maybe a client or a colleague calling you Brad, that does, right? Like it's everyone doesn't have to be overcome, but we have to be really thoughtful about, are we letting it become the default?
Sure. And I guess, now that we know why it's so important, how do we actually go about this on a day-to-day basis of developing this mindset of taking more risks? How do we find these micro opportunities for risk taking in our day and then actually take advantage of them?
Yeah, a few different ways. I mean, first one, shameless plug, my book, Good Awkward, talks about this a lot. One of the things that prevents us from taking the risks we might desperately want to take is the fear of embarrassing ourselves, or the fear that it's going to feel awkward. And then we're going to have, cringe all over our face. People are gonna be like, what is this fool doing? Right? We are humans, social creatures that we care, deeply, whether we like to admit it or not, about what others think. We are a society that likes to belong. And that's fine. It helps us cooperate. It helps us fit in. These days that feels further away than ever, but generally speaking, we are people who like to cooperate with one another. And when we take a risk for a moment, we are not sure what's on the other side of that. Will people like it? Will they like us? Will it go well? Will it, land with me on my face and with, mud splattered everywhere? We don't know. And so in those moments, that emotion can be very paralyzing. So first step before anything else is get your mind right around the emotions that come up when you're trying to take a risk. If you ever feel awkward, embarrassed, cringe, filled, or are worried that might happen, selfishly read my book. Like get your mind in the right place, do the mindset work that's required of that emotion so that that's not standing in your way. Mm-hmm. The second step is, once you get your mind right, you got to put the action in. Like, this is definitely an intentional process. Know that the system today is not designed to help you take micro risks. You actually have to go out of your way and do it. This is going to sound ridiculous, but my son he's 12 and a half. He wanted Playa bowls, like the acai bowls place. And the one he wanted it on DoorDash. I said, no problem. The Nutella bowl, has all the stuff on it, but it had coconut on it. And there was no option to remove the coconut on DoorDash. So I said, buddy, you can get it if you really want it. But you know what you got to do? You got to call. After we place the order, you got to call and say, I just placed an order on DoorDash and I don't want the coconut. He hemmed and hawed. And then he called and he said, hi, my name is Henna Pryor. I just ordered and I'd like the coconut off. He got off the phone. Brett, I kid you not. He was like, I did it. I did it. Right?
I love it.
We have adult equivalents of this all day long, right? All day long. The adult equivalent of, I have to just do it. Even though I don't want to, even if you don't want to walk down the hall and talk to your colleague, even if you don't want to pick up the phone and call your client because it's easier to send the text, understand that you are giving yourself a repetition, a social repetition, a social push-up that allows you to be more willing and able to take more risks in front of other people when the time comes. Do not diminish these little everyday interactions. They are building, they are accumulating when we need to take more risks. So go out of your way a little bit today. Talk to the cashier. Take your headphones out in the coffee shop for 5 minutes, but know that you are giving yourself an advantage where other people are staying on that smooth path.
Right. So we need to really just kind of look at life from the frame of, where are these little opportunities in our day
Yeah.
for us to become better, for us to be more apt to take risks on the bigger decisions in our lives. Maybe it's asking the barista how his day is going, or maybe it's you're in the elevator with some guy and you like his shoes and you want to compliment him on his shoes, but
Mm-hmm.
there's fear in your chest preventing you from doing so. Realize that's an opportunity to get better, to get stronger, to be your most impactful self. The more that we can add up these little micro opportunities, the more impactful we're going to be.
Yeah. And, again, some people will hear this and they'll go, well, that's table stakes, right? We're humans. We talk to each other. Our recently completed research study, which I'll send you the link so you can put it in the show notes, it says otherwise. 44% of working Americans say that their relationships at work and professionally are superficial. 50, I think it's 56% of working Americans would rather work solo on projects, even though over 80% know that how important it is to collaborate and work as part of a group. That's a huge delta of people that would rather work by themselves on stuff. So don't take this idea of strengthening social muscle as table stakes. Unfortunately, most of us, whether again, you're in a professional corporate workplace, whether you're an entrepreneur, most of us don't work in isolation. Unless you're an astronaut or a polar explorer or a prisoner, right? Most of us don't work completely by ourselves. We work in front of other people, and it's usually not us being afraid of taking a risk. It's us being afraid of taking a risk and getting it wrong in front of other people.
For sure.
That's
That's
what
what it's
we're
all
afraid of.
about. 100%. We just don't want to look bad. We don't want to lose status in front of the
Exactly.
people that we're with. But I just think there's so much, truth to that. And the more that we can take advantage of those little micro opportunities, the more courageous we're going to be. That every time we do that, we're adding to our resume of proof that we are a person of courage.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we can look back at that resume of proof of, wow, I've done all these acts of courage in this past week, this past month,
Mm-hmm.
this past year, the more likely we are going to feel that fear in our chest in the future and take action even while feeling it.
Exactly. I think sometimes we overstate what is required to build this sort of daily muscle, right? I think we like, oh, we gotta, cold plunge and do all these things. Like, okay, fine. Like, if you want to do that, have fun, right? I'm not going to join you, but if that's your jam, have fun. But you can still improve these, opportunities for yourselves in very small, low stake ways if you just take the path less traveled. I was talking to a client the other day and she said, Henna, I was at one of your keynotes and I started just occasionally once a week going to a different coffee shop. Like, she always went to the same coffee shop every morning, just her routine. They knew her there. She said, I love it. I love being familiar. I love the ritual. But once a week, I challenge myself to either, go to a different coffee shop or do my morning routine backwards. Normally she brushes her teeth, then washes her face, then gets her coffee. She said, I got my coffee before I, brushed my teeth before I drank it, but they kind of just went out of order, right? She goes, it's nuts how that changes the tone of that day. I think more creatively. I think more innovatively. I tend to have conversations I wasn't planning on having. There's something about just shaking the pattern free, right? Breaking the pattern interrupt that activates something different for me on those days. I said, well, science has a reason for that, right? You're setting yourself up neurally to try some different pathways that day. Rituals are great. I'm not anti-ritual, but also know that when you are in a season where you're trying to take more risks, that you can mentally prime your brain by forcing yourself a little bit, not natural, doesn't have to be, to do some of these things that are outside of your normal day to day, even in micro moments, in order to better prime for the rest of it.
For sure. And there's plenty of stories of, great creatives or great authors that would on purpose change up their setting on a daily
Mm-hmm.
basis to kind of inspire them to think
Yep.
in different ways, whether it was renting a new hotel room every day or driving through the countryside and finding a new place in nature to write. There's a lot of evidence about just changing up your routine 10, 15 degrees on a regular basis can really change the entire tone for your day. And I know you brought up cold plunges there. I'm also not a cold plunge guy.
Just not gonna do
I
it.
can't stand cold weather. I really can't. I live in the Northeast, so I should probably,
Yeah.
think about a location change. But I have been experimenting with the cold shower recently.
Yeah.
I've been hitting myself with the cold shower at the end of a warm shower, And, I listen to a lot of Andrew Huberman, and he talks about the
Yes.
science behind doing things you don't want to do and how it'll kind of make you more disciplined in your everyday life. And I do find that the more often I do this cold shower, the more likely I am to do the things on my to-do list that I don't want to do. But I think it's really
Yeah.
the same thing with pushing yourself socially. You're just consistently making yourself do that little thing that you don't want to do, but maybe it's good for you. The more we can make that decision in the moment, the stronger we're going to get.
Yeah. And again, this is not an attack on cold plunges. I have plenty of friends who do them. I also will do a cold blast, at the end of the shower from time to time. And I hate it. I hate every second of it.
Oh, it's the worst.
And I'm glad I did, because this is where, when it comes to choosing risks, we have to choose our risks. Not every risk is worth taking. We would be reckless if we took every risk that pop into our head. We have to choose our risks. And so in those moments where I'm like, do I or don't I? That's when it's really anchored back to identity. Who is the type of person that I want to be? And then in that moment, as I'm deciding, do I want to switch from this nice warm stream to a 2-second, 3-second blast of cold? It's not about, do I want to do this or not? It's, I want to be the type of person who practices what I preach. I want to be the type of person that experiences hard and discomfort on a daily basis, because guess what? The hard and discomfort of 2 weeks ago, if I've been doing it every day, stops feeling hard and uncomfortable. So I have to change it up. It has to be something else that feels a little bit hard and uncomfortable. In this case, cold blast still not really getting easier on any single day, but it's a small stakes way to practice that feeling. And again, to your point, that's in isolation. Nobody's watching me cringe or wince or whatever it is when that's happening, but it does prime me mentally to do the things later in the day where others might be watching. And it's just a good way to mentally get into that state.
Just a thought, I think for myself, it can honestly help to kind of like track these little wins, So I actually really have a list of evidence, to look back on. And, for me, anything I track in life, I just naturally do more. So if I were to maybe like start a note in my phone and just track all the instances today where I stepped forth, through that fear into that cringe where maybe before I wouldn't have, I think the more that I track those things, the more likely I'll actually take action on them in the future.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's an adage I once heard of, what gets recorded gets rewarded, right? There's versions of that, but even, in micro stakes, one of my favorite examples that I share in the book is the former CEO of Unilever. She's now the CEO of Chanel. Her name is Lena Nair, and she would often find herself at a desk full of male leaders. There's just not that many female CEOs at her level. And one of her growth edges was she wanted to speak up in meetings, but that was a risk for her. She wanted to raise her hand. She wanted to offer something. She wasn't sure how it was going to go, how it was going to be received. So she created a practice where she made a commitment to herself that every time she spoke up in a meeting, she would write down a star just in her notebook, kind of quietly. And if they liked what she said, if they liked it, she gave herself 2 stars. Nice. But her goal at the end of every meeting was to have 5 stars in her notebook. It didn't really matter how she got there, whether it was I needed to talk 5 times or they liked, they really were into something I said. I got myself there faster, but her goal was 5 stars. And in that way, exactly to your point, she was training herself to reward and appreciate the process, to celebrate the process, not get hung up on did the risk work, starting to get used to the sound of her own voice in the meeting. That's what she was celebrating.
Yeah, I mean, it really works. I have this app called Streaks where I kind of track some of the habits that I'm working on the moment. And it's so funny, like one of those habits is daily meditation. And I just love pressing that little button every day after I meditate for 10 or 15 minutes. And then after meditating for like a few weeks straight, I'm like, well, I think I've kind of ingrained this habit. I don't really need to track this habit anymore. So I'll take it off of the app. And the moment I take it off of the app, I undoubtedly start to slack off with my meditation. It's just something about tracking things in life that just makes us more likely to actually continue to do them.
Especially, I just will add to this, especially if you're a fast thinker. I'm a fast thinker, so I can very much, mentally play this game with myself of, yeah, I'll do that. Got this. If I don't slow myself down and make the internal external in some way, meaning, put it in my Streaks app, put a check mark on my notebook, call a friend and accountability buddy, right? I did that. If I don't make the internal external, I will breeze through it in my brain and it is less likely to get repeated because I'm already on to the next thing. I have to slow myself down. And one way fast processors can do that is, to your point, some sort of like external activity that they associate. I have had to be very rigorous about that in my own life. Otherwise, it becomes very easy for me to poo-poo it away and move on to the next thought.
Sure, sure. And kind of curious, you obviously are a very, driven, ambitious person, right? The best-selling book, the coaching business, you're speaking in front of huge audiences around the globe now. Curious if you have a detailed why as to why you do all the things you do and why you work as hard as you do.
I'm going to answer in the reverse first. What used to be my why, and I'm really grateful is no longer, mostly no longer, let me be honest, was a very strong achievement orientation. I grew up in a South Asian household where it was, straight A's and the good grades and the good college and the good job. This is very much the wiring that I had. And if I'm being totally honest with you, that was my number one driver for a very long time. Henna needs to be the best. She needs to do a good job. Whatever the professional equivalent in my keynote speaking and writing career now is, I want straight A's. I want people to say she's at the top of her game.
Right.
That was my operating model for a very long time. Yeah, for sure. Gold stars, gold bars. I want all of it, right? I want all of it. And while I would be lying to you if I said that part of my driving force was dead, it's not dead.
I don't think it's ever dead for really successful people. That's always going to be a part of the equation, and that's okay.
But I do have a much healthier relationship with it now. So now my why really, and I genuinely believe this, it's not just something that I say, is about impact. I really realize that by not playing small and by taking bigger risks, I'm able to reach more people with these ideas that create a ripple effect into their lives. It helps them take more risks. It helps them have the hard conversation. It helps them work better as a team. And so now I'm really motivated by the ripple effect. I've long seen in my own investment in coaches and watching other speakers that one insight can change the way people walk through the world entirely. One moment, it's like, oh man, I can't unhear that, right? Can change somebody's life in a way that's so powerful. So I think now my guiding principle, my why is be really rigorous about the work that I create and the research that I do about creating more of those moments, because I know how impactful they can be on the quality and the transformation of someone's life. And B, stop hiding and allow your voice to be used in ways that it can do that for even more people. Like if I want to transform millions of lives, I can do that one conversation at a time, or I can try to scale impact. And so it feels like almost a responsibility to try to reach as many people as I can. So I will write, I will speak, I will, however you'll have me, I will join you. But I think that to me feels like a North Star that I want to keep chasing.
And what if you have one, and maybe you don't, maybe it's totally different every day, but curious if you have one, what does your average day look like from start to finish?
I don't have one. you read me like a book. Here's what I've recognized about myself. And the more I share this, the more I tend to find that people resonate with it, that share my wiring. I feel very suffocated by a time blocked day. Okay. I feel very bound by hard written goals.
So you don't like the 8 to 9, 9 to 10, 10 to 11:30.
God, no.
I'm writing.
Get it away from me. No.
Okay.
I mean, again, to the degree that I have a Zoom call, I have a podcast with you. Certain things are on the calendar, right?
But in between those, you're not blocking off your entire calendar. Okay.
No. I have a priority list of these are the things I need to do. And, before anybody think I'm a tech nerd, my priority list is a scribbled, a Walmart 99-cent sparkly notebook.
I love that. See, that's great to see right there. I mean, there is science behind writing something freehand and actually
I like that it sparkles. This is why I bought it. But this is, on a daily basis. So this was yesterday. This is today. And I just refreshed. Okay, did this, still need to do this. So now priorities are in different order because these got done. These had to get moved up. Priority list is how I like to operate because that helps me feel like I know what I need to move towards and then go in an order. Beyond that, I am sensitive to my own failing of a goal. So I'm very hard on myself. Like anybody else on this planet, any listener of your podcast, go ahead, try to criticize me. I don't care. You know why I don't care? Because I've already beat myself up way worse than you ever will. Like I am my own biggest critic. And so when I set a goal or a plan and I don't hit it, the downside of that feeling far outweighs the setting of the goal to begin with. To me, I like
For
to
sure.
know where I'm headed. I always think of my operating model as compass, not a map. So every
Hmm.
day I have a compass. I know which direction I'm heading, which tasks I'm heading towards, but the how I get there and exactly what hour of the day, TBD. That said, I do have some rituals. I have, my morning coffee every day. I largely drink it out of this cup. I like that
Nice.
ritual. At night, when I'm, done with my work day, I'm cuddling with my kids on the couch. I have a cup of tea, and that's in a regular mug. My friend noticed that the other day. She goes, "How come you have your coffee in a travel mug and your tea in a regular mug?" And I said, "I don't know, but I
That's just the
do."
way I
Right?
do it.
Exactly. So there are some ritual anchors throughout the day that I think are healthy, right? To keep some semblance of ritual in the day. There's plenty of research on the value of those. But for the most part, direction, not map.
You work off of a to-do list of priorities. And curious,
Yeah.
do you set that to-do list of priorities at the beginning of the week and then just try and get them done by the end of the week? Or is it just an everyday you check in type thing?
No, it's an everyday, and it honestly is based on due dates in part, because sometimes it's,
Hmm.
slide deck for this client, or,
Right.
some that. But then after that, typically the priority list is, the filter I think I mentally run myself through is this, attached to the business, meaning is it a revenue generator?
Hmm.
And usually I'm asking myself some version of, if it is a revenue generator and it's going to take some time, is it something that I'm keeping on the priority list and transferring over day after day because I don't want to do it? And it's not because I don't want to do it because I don't enjoy it. It's probably because I'm intimidated by it, or
Right.
it's something that's going to take a little bit of brain power. And so sometimes I have to reorder. So right now I'm looking at the order for today. I need to put the thing that's on there as number 3. That needs to go above. The thing that's above it right now is the easy thing for me to knock out faster,
Sure. Eat the
but it
frog.
doesn't need attention as much as the yeah.
Eat the
So
frog.
there's a little bit of just kind of regular recalibrating that I think goes into the list. And again, I wish I could tell you I have some technological,
No,
like the thing that needs to get done, it gets a star. It's like,
right.
Henna, this first, right? There's technologies that I've messed with to help with this, but frankly, I tend to find the analog, the writing it down, the crossing it out, that's just works better for me.
For sure. I think there's just something very satisfying about a high achiever or a
Yeah.
type A personality about just crossing something off a list. Just gives us great joy.
Yeah. And what's funny is I don't write anything else. Like I'm very technological. Everything else is in Trello, in my notes app, in my Google Docs. I'm very
Oh, that's
techy.
pretty interesting. But daily
Yeah.
goals, we're writing
Uh-huh.
those out, chicken scratch, and
It's funny.
it just feels good.
It never occurred to me until we just started talking about it. Literally everything else is in a tech format except for my daily to-dos. That's
That's
it.
that's pretty interesting. And just
You just
curious,
you, you just helped me realize that. I didn't know
nice.
that.
I'm glad we're bringing ourselves to realizations here. And curious, when you see maybe that thing on your list and you're feeling some resistance to it because you know it's going to be hard,
Uh-huh.
do you have any like self-talk or any mantras that you lean on in those moments to get yourself to take action in the face of resistance?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is table stakes, but it's just start. Just start. It's my best friend Colin Henderson has an expression and I use it all the time. It's the start that stops most people. It's the start.
Totally
It's
agree.
the start that I'm dreading. It's not doing the thing. Once I get started, I get in flow pretty quickly. It's just starting that feels daunting. So when I finally get myself like, okay, it's time to work on this, it's just a literal out loud, again, make the internal external. I will literally scream into the room, Henna, just start. Just start. And I will make myself start. Within 5 minutes, I'm good. I'm in flow. I'm going. It's the start that stops most people. So when I see something on the list, it's literally, I mean, I wish I could tell you it was something more, sophisticated than this, but it's literally me shouting into the room. I will say it's distanced self-talk. I'm using my name and I'm referring to myself almost in second person, right?
Yeah.
Third person name. Henna, just start. I'm
Hmm.
hearing myself say the words and then I sort of force myself into action.
It's pretty interesting. Actually, I just did an episode on kind of how to level up your self-talk. And there's a lot of science behind
Oh,
talking
yeah.
in third person that will actually make self-talk a lot more effective. So I
Yep.
think there's a lot to that. And there's a reason why that works for you. And curious, I think this is something a lot of high achieving people struggle with. We're kind of talking about your average day. Is
Yeah.
there a time in your day where you shut the laptop and you turn work off? Or are you kind of always working a little bit 7 days a week?
Um, I'm not working 7 days a week anymore. Anymore. There was a period in early entrepreneurship where my work life integration was pretty garbage, if I'm being honest. And I think
Okay.
that's, I don't feel guilty about that. I think at the beginning, I feel like I'm supposed to feel guilty about that. I'm married with 2 kids. My children are almost 15 and 12 and a half, ninth grade and seventh grade. They're self-sufficient, but they want their mother's attention, and I feel like I'm supposed to feel like, oh, I was working so much before and I shouldn't have. No, I'm not going to feed that narrative. I, at the time, needed to. I was building a business. What I did need at that time was probably some healthy recalibration and communication with my family about when certain seasons were going to be busier than others. Today, I have done the work. I have front loaded the work to have, a steady stream of incoming inquiries. I do the work regularly. I've built systems to, keep myself busy with projects that are revenue generators. So today, you will rarely see my laptop open after 4:30. My kids get off the bus at 3
Love
and
that.
3:15 respectively. That's not to say if something comes through on my phone and I'm like, I should probably address that tonight, that I won't quickly run over to my computer and respond to an email, but I'd say that's rare. And that's in part because I have just reestablished my priorities. I need to work out. I want to spend time with my kids. I want to do things that are of value to me. And I think now that I trust my ability to do the work and do it at a high level, I no longer have the scarcity mindset of, if I don't get back to this client, this inquiry within an hour, they're going to choose someone else. But that took time. So now my boundaries are able to be much more enforced in a way that feels good to me, because I don't have the scarcity mindset that I did as an early entrepreneur. But I don't want people to think that that is bad to have that mindset. I think in a way, like, this is going to sound controversial, that scarcity mindset is incredibly, motivating for people at the beginning.
You certainly
It's
can be.
not healthy long term. You want to have a different mindset long term, but at the beginning, where am I going to get my next client? Now, if that's going to paralyze you, again, not healthy, but for many high achievers, that healthy self-doubt makes you work harder on your content, inspires you to go network with more people, tries to create, creative ways that you can put yourself out there. If it's creating that, then I'm not going to engineer it out of you, to be honest. Keep going, keep some semblance of what matters to you. Don't sacrifice your friends and family in the process, but a little bit of that healthy stuff early is good. And then the rest becomes a little easier as it goes.
Henna Pryor, thank you for being with us today. This has been an awesome talk.
So much fun. Thank you for having me.
Where can everyone keep up with what you got going on these days?
HennaPryor.com will redirect you to my website. The big thing is, if you go to, my website, it'll redirect you to PriorityGroup.com/study. Study is the new research study that just came out. Definitely check that out. And I am Henna Pryor on all the socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, but LinkedIn is my preferred playground. So please go follow me over there.
There you go, Henna. Thank you for being with us. And Persistence Playbook Nation, thank you for being with us. This is your weekly reminder that you will feel resistance to the important work in your life this week. In those moments, acknowledge the resistance, lean into your why, and take action anyway. We'll see you next week.